One of the most Amish things that we hear is that the Amish do not use electricity, yet many times when you go into Amish communities, they have solar panels, so they are using electricity. Are they hypocrites? Let's find out. The Amish are an intriguing group. They're actually a religious group. They have their roots in the Anabaptist movement of the Protestant Reformation back in the 1500s. I did do a video on that, and I will put it above, just so you can dig in a little bit more. That's a whole nother video. But they prioritize a simple and traditional way of life, and they guide it by their interpretation of biblical teachings. One of the key tenets of their faith is a commitment to a community-focused, agrarian lifestyle that emphasizes humility, family, and separation from the modern world. So it's not that they don't want to be here in the world and they don't can talk to people that aren't Amish, but they really strive to be in the world, but not of the world. Now, I'm going to explain what that means in just a moment. The decision to avoid certain forms of technology, which includes electricity, is based on their belief in the importance of maintaining the separation from wider society and its potential negative influence. So as you can see, when you watch the Amish living, they're very traditional. They keep to themselves. They're very modest. Everybody kind of looks the same. So everything, they just try to preserve their distinct cultural identity. They want to maintain a strong sense of community and limit any outside influences that could potentially erode their values. And if you look at America today, our country was built on biblical Judeo-Christian values, and those values are slipping away because when each generation comes along, we just keep slipping further away. And the Amish have been very good at maintaining that by keeping very, very close-knit. In fact, many times in an Amish religious group or a sect, whatever you want to call them, typically, and the numbers aren't exact, typically they might get to 100 members and then they'll say, okay, it's time to split in half. Now, I was asking one of my neighbors, I said, what is that rule? And he just laughed. He goes, well, to be honest, it depends on how many people we can fit in the barn. And I thought that was funny because it just makes sense. But he said, typically that ends up being about 35 families. That's a lot, though, if they all have a lot of children. So it's actually probably more than 50. But yeah, however many we can fit in the barn, when we start getting too big, then we'll split in half. So I thought that was cute. I had to throw that in there. So there are no cut and dry rules, right? Just things that make sense. Let's look at a Bible verse that probably could be the one that the Amish are following with their biblical teachings. It's Romans 12:2. But it says, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing it you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. Again, this is a verse that all Christians can follow, not just the Amish. They've just done a better job of really sticking to being part of the world, but not letting the world transform you. And we can go ahead. I think it would be okay to add technology to electricity. We talk a lot about the Amish and how they don't have electricity, but then you see them using solar panels. And people have come to me and said, well, they're hypocrites. They use it. And it's not that they don't want to use, quote, electricity. It's that they don't want to use it in a sense that it's going to encourage them to use lots of electronical devices or technology. They also don't want to be connected to the grid. Real quick, before I go through the reasons for not wanting the technology and the electricity, I want to talk about not being connected to the grid and actually how beneficial it is for them. My husband and I were sitting here one day. He works for some Amish. He does hauling and things like that. And he was just saying how, man, they went out, they're doing really well. Their business is lucrative. They're buying this and that. And I said, think about it. If we sit down and add up the bills that we pay that they don't, you do it too. Your cell phone, your television, your electric, the heat and the AC, your Wi-Fi. We have to have a dish out here. You're talking probably very close to $1,000 a month by the time you add up every one of those devices that you're paying for. They're not paying that. So they're already $10,000 a year ahead of us of money that they're not putting out for this stuff. So that kind of was awakening for me. So not only are they not being sucked into all this stuff and being influenced? They're actually making more money. So what does electricity do? First of all, they do have solar panels, and typically you might see it in the barn. It might be running some electrical tools or charging the batteries. I know at our general store, I did an interview one time with the owner, and he showed me the whole setup, and he said, basically we have this set up to recharge the batteries for the cash registers inside the store. Again, they weren't using lighting. All their lighting was coming from the ceiling through the roof. They had some sun openings for the light to get in. And so they still weren't using lighting like we do. And they still don't use the heat and stuff like we do. But with the electricity, but they will use it for those things that they need to charge and use batteries. So it really depends on each community. So why would they want to avoid worldly influences? Well, they believe that adopting any modern conveniences like electricity, as an example, can lead to a dependency on technology and a departure from their core values of simplicity and self-sufficiency. Now, again, they do charge batteries, but they also know that if that device that they're using, maybe the cash register or the tool, they always have something as a backup in case that's not there. Think about this. It helps to preserve the community and family bonds. By putting certain technologies aside, they're more likely to engage face-to-face within their community and even at nighttime with their family. Everybody's not sitting around watching TV. Everybody's not sitting there on their devices. And they will use a phone. I will admit that. But again, it's very, very limited. They try to only use it for within their business and make those kinds of calls. If they have to meet with somebody from the church, they're not going to get on the phone and talk. They're all going to come and meet as a group and meet in person. So it's really dependent on things like that. They limit any frivolous pursuits. The avoidance of electricity helps to limit the use of entertainment devices and other distractions that might divert attention away from important community and family responsibilities. So there you go again. They're not sitting there on their cell phone when they all go out to dinner or when they all meet for a picnic or something. Everybody is interacting and engaging. How many times have you gone to a restaurant and there's people sitting there right across from each other and they're both on their devices? So there's a lot to be said there. They have an emphasis on manual labor. So without electricity, many tasks can be done manually, and that reinforces the value of hard work. And there's nothing wrong with that. It also reinforces self-sufficiency and a strong work ethic, something that we all are starting to lack in our culture. How many young adults have you seen that get jobs and they think nothing of quitting that job? They think nothing of being disrespectful. Those values just aren't being taught like they used to be. And I'm not saying everybody, I'm just saying in general. So there you go. They do use it sparingly. They are not hypocrites. They're trying to work really hard to be in the world, but not of the world. And it is hard as each generation comes along. You can see again in our own culture, there's so many changes, and to have to maintain that lifestyle that's actually over 200 years old is a hard feat. But I am excited to see that many people are going back to homesteading and back to living off the land and back to self-sufficiency. And we can learn from the Amish. So yes, they will use it, but they will use it sparingly. So they're not hypocrites. They're just doing the best they can within this world.